Kahono Erohi provisions which are seriously damaging to the constitutional arrangements in this country. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Honourable David Parker.
Mr. Chairman,
final call.
I hope Marama Fox was listening to the response from the Honourable Nick Smith, because when asked what crops means, he says essentially plants that produce crops such as cereals, vegetables or fruit. That's what it means. Therefore, it doesn't mean pasture. It probably doesn't mean forestry. Well, Marama Fox is signing the death warrant of the Maori Party at this election if they vote through this bill. That is what this is at. That's the only reason that you've pushed this hard, or that your party has pushed this hard for this amendment, is that you know that your party will be held to account by the electors of Hawke's Bay, Northland and throughout the country for selling them down the drain in respect of GM pastures that can now be knocked out as illegal and will be by this minister if in power to do so after the election if this bill passes. Marama Fox, that's what the minister said. That's what the dictionaries say a crop is. That's what most of us understand a crop is. People don't understand a crop to be a bit of grass or a bit of pasture growing. They understand a crop. Well, that's what the minister said. The minister, I'm sure, will. It's on Hansard. You read Hansard. You read a dictionary. Marama Fox, you are consigning your party to history. That is the seriousness of what you are contemplating, and we will cause you to be held to account for your egregious passage into law of a law which confers regulation-making powers on the minister.
I'd like to hear what's being said, and this constant barracking is unacceptable. Tone it down.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've made my point. The political consequences of this will be visited upon the Maori Party at the next election. A crop, as the minister said, is something that produces crops such as cereal, vegetables or fruit. That's what he said, and that's what the dictionaries say, and that's what most people will think this clause makes. Sir, I want to. This is big politics for the Maori Party, and you've got it wrong. You've got it wrong. The only reason that you're back here supporting this is because of this amendment, and this amendment does not do what you are telling to your voters it does do. Mr. Speaker, the Productivity Commission suggests various improvements to resource management processes, which are largely align where the Labor Party stands on the need for freer rules re land availability for housing, mechanisms to make sure that the inefficiencies of infrastructure use are visited upon those who cause them if they put the subdivision in the wrong place, but nonetheless overcoming the problems of the drip feeding of land through councils and land bankers at the moment. Sir, this legislation doesn't achieve those purposes. It further complicates the RMA. It hands too much power to the executive. The minister says that these he essentially says, trust me in respect of my rules to overrule the substance of plans. I'm not going to use them except responsibly. That's what he's saying. But actually the power goes far broader than that and does allow central government to override local decisions made under plans. Sir, there are many other provisions in this clause so I'm going to make a slightly procedural point. Here we are with the government constructing amendments to every part of the RMA, which is a very long document, and every one of us is restricted to 4 calls. And in a call we can only really make 1 or 2 points, and in respect of important points just such as that I've just been making, you've got to actually use more than 1 call on that 1 point. So through the government whacking all of these changes to the RMA in one part, you're effectively frustrating this parliament having a decent debate about so many other details that are flawed in this bill, to the long-term detriment of the environment, to increased cost to those who have to wrestle with this section. I haven't had time to talk about the flawed collaborative processes or the other...
Under call up, Marama Fox.
Thank you, Mr Chair.